Kratos would easily beat Kiryu in a fight, man. I mean, he could literally rip the guy in half. Tiger Drop negates all damage. What? Tiger Drop negates all damage. Yeah, but it wouldn't even scratch Kratos. He's a god for gods. Tiger Drop negates all damage. What you have just witnessed is a common argument that can be found online debating who would win in a fight to the death between two fictional characters, whether they be from separate franchises or even from the exact same piece of media. This one is of course analysing who would win between Kratos from God of War or Kiryu from Yakuza / Like a Dragon. Now the thing with this specific argument is that really it's just all a big meme. I think most people understand that realistically Kratos could snap Kiryu like a twig. Although if the two ever were to fight, they would probably realize that the other was chill like that, and the two would bond over being fathers who have been through a lot, and then they'd be best mates. But the whole Tiger Drop negates damage argument, with Tiger Drop being the iconic counterattack that Kiryu has in almost every appearance he's made, is based on some truth, and really is just a running gag that people have in the community for a laugh, but it's actually a pretty freaking big misconception that a lot of people have for some reason. You see, it negates damage, but not all damage, or at least it doesn't negate all damage in all of the games. How much it does or does not negate will actually differ between game. You'll see what I mean soon, but for now, I went through and did some stress testing with Tiger Drop across all the different games to see exactly how it works. I thought to start it in the earliest possible game that Tiger Drop was in, being Yakuza 3. And by that, I mean I never unlocked it in the PS2 games because I didn't know how, and I don't know if it's in the game that came out right before Yakuza 3, being Kenzan, but whatever, it doesn't matter. And you'll see why it doesn't matter later. Now in Yakuza 3, I jumped into one of the ultimate battles, or climax battles, whatever you want to call them. This one had a bunch of dudes in a small space who spam attacks, so what I tried to do was taunt them and Tiger Drop one guy and just sort of hope that another one of them hit me at the same time to see how much damage is negated. And I got results surprisingly quick. As you can see, I was just about halfway through the actual attack part of the Tiger Drop animation and I got hit. But then after the hit landed and Kiryu was in the recovery animation, I got hit again. And still in the recovery animation, I was hit a third time. After the animation, I was then hit a fourth time, and on that fourth hit, I was finally actually staggered. Now, the important thing here is obviously that I took damage. In fact, I took damage both during and after the actual attack. On all three hits, there was a little flinch animation that Kiryu did, but none of those three hits interrupted the attack. So seemingly, in at least Yakuza 3, Kiryu gains unbreakable super armor during Tiger Drop, which I don't know if that's a general term or if I'm just being like a Smash Bros pleb, but with super armor, your attacks don't get interrupted, but you do still take damage. So that's one game down, let's move on to the next one. With Yakuza 4, I just did another one of those ultimate battles, being this one where you fight Akiyama and Tanimura. Now it was kind of annoying because I couldn't just go fight a group of enemies, as in Yakuza 4 they apparently got rid of fear and rage, or maybe just rage and I completely forgot, or it's like way harder to trigger. Enemies also seem to do the thing that the more modern games, besides a couple, would do, where one enemy attacks you at a time. But regardless, through perseverance, I managed to Tiger Drop Akiyama right as he was in the middle of kicking me in the face. And so, as you probably could have guessed, given how Yakuza 4 is just a copy and paste job of Yakuza 3, Tiger Drop functions the exact same as it does in that game. But now with more playable characters, I figured I could check Counter Kick, being Akiyama's equivalent of Tiger Drop, to see if it functioned the same as Kiryu's counter. This one was a little harder to verify, but in every recording that I landed a counterattack in, I didn't take damage a single time. Now I tested it against Minami in an ultimate battle thing, but I also did try it just doing it against a dude in the street. Now during almost every counter kick, something that 100% should have hit me didn't. Attacks were phasing through Akiyama like he was a ghost, in particular this one street fight where I should have 200% been stabbed in the dick, and you can see that despite being stabbed in the dick, I did not take any damage. So what is the likely assumption is that Akiyama's counter kick does actually negate all damage, as it makes him completely invulnerable, or I guess Smash Bros terms intangible because nothing even connects with him. And I say that because it's different to something like Judgment where EX boost makes you completely invincible but attacks can still hit you and it'll drain your heat whenever that happens, but that's beside the point. And that's because there's still a likely conclusion for counter kick. All Tiger Drops and counterattacks and all that across all the games, like 99.9% of the time, interrupt the attack you are countering. I say that because there's some specific enemies or bosses that can just super armor through your super armor, but it's a very small amount. But given how the attack gets interrupted, it's hard to tell if maybe after the counter kick hit actually lands, Akiyama can be damaged. I say that because in a couple of the games it actually does work like that, although I'll get to that when I get to that. Another thing is that you can see in this clip, counter kick can definitely miss, which I feel was just a problem in pre-Dragon Engine games with all counters, especially Yakuza Kiwami for for some reason. But yeah, so far it's looking like Kratos would kick Kiryu's teeth in, and maybe that Akiyama could actually be Kratos instead. But moving on to the next Tiger Drop game, we've got Yakuza 5. Doing a mix of street battles and ultimate battles, I found that during every Tiger Drop I wasn't taking any damage at all. But then in this recording, I actually got the perfect situation to occur. Although, first of all, I just thought this recording was hilarious because it's a perfect example of why Yakuza 5 is so easy. Like, this dude is literally trying his best to not hit me. But anyway, for some reason when I went to Tiger Drop this guy, Kiryu said, screw this guy in particular, and hit the dude standing next to him, which meant that the first guy's attack was not interrupted. And despite him still being perfectly capable of hitting me, Kiryu took no damage whatsoever. Now, I did a few more tests after getting this to happen, but I think Yakuza 5 may have been the first game where Kiryu is completely invulnerable during the entirety of the Tiger Drop animation. And I believe this was then maintained in Ishin, Zero, and Kiwami because all four of these games were all basically identical given how they were all on the same engine and were all built off of each other. But despite that being very likely the case given how Yakuza 3 and 4 were the same engine and had the exact same properties, I thought I would go and test it in the later games anyway. Now, recording on my PS5 is kind of annoying, so I tested all of my Ishin stuff in the remake, Like a Dragon Ishin, but I think it's fine anyway because from all my hours of playing both versions of Ishin, I kind of always felt that Tiger Drop made you completely invulnerable during like the whole animation, and from rough testing, I think I'm correct. But in both versions anyway, you can parry first, which does grant you complete invincibility, with the original Ishin having that buff last for like 20 hours and the remake having it last for 20 picoseconds. So I'm just going to put a blanket statement over both Ishins and assume it works the exact same as Yakuza 5's Tiger Drop, as it's very likely copied from that game. But something I noticed without even looking at footage frame by frame was that in Ishin, Tiger Drop was a frame 1 attack, or at least it was most of the time anyway. That's why when you finish a fight with Tiger Drop, you just see the first frame of the animation on that little freeze frame thing it does. But anyway, on to Yakuza 0, which doesn't actually have Tiger Drop at all, unless you want to count a specific QuickTime event, but what it has instead is Counter Hook with Brawler, which is basically the closest thing, and Iron Fist counter with the Dragon Style, which is like the second closest thing. Neither of them are Tiger Drop, but I figured it was still worth the test. So I went and fought Mr. Shakedown, and because it has been a very long time since I fought Mr. Shakedown, of course I immediately died. But anyway, take 2 against him. In no time at all, I verified that Counter Hook makes you completely invulnerable for the entire animation, as you can see by the second hit of his combo barely glancing me because it hit right as the animation ends. But other times when I timed it slightly later, you can see his second hit just completely phases through me. But then just to test, I went and used Iron Fist counter against him, which is of course a terrible move, and so the first friggin' attack in the recording completely missed, and I kept having to pause every single time I did the attack to restore my heat. But you can see it does work the same as Counter Hook, being that the entire animation makes Kiryu invulnerable, but given how it is a much shorter animation than Counter Hook, I was not at all safe from the other 2 hits of his combo. And then the final game of this engine, we have Kiwami. And in Kiwami, we have good old Majima to beat the shit out of and test Tiger Drop with. When it wasn't missing everyone I tried to hit, you can see pretty plainly that once again, it works like the previous 3 games, where you are invulnerable for the whole animation, which is of course obvious by me only getting hit by Majima as soon as the animation ends. But now we have the Dragon Engine games, being Yakuza 6 and every release after it. Besides the Ishin remake, but whatever. Yakuza 6 doesn't have any replayable ultimate challenges, strong enemy to consistently face, or Colosseum to participate in to test Tiger Drop. But fortunately, what it does have is the most annoying AI in the entire franchise, because they will do everything in their power to punch you in the back of the head 24/7. Although someone will probably tell me that's just a PC thing, but it pissed me off on the PS4 too, so whatever, it doesn't matter. Tiger Drop in Yakuza 6, as well as any other counters in all games afterwards, seems to hit much more reliably, and maybe it can hit multiple enemies in older games, but it also has a huge hitbox, so it can just smack the shit out of a whole group if you want. But after trying for a while to get what I wanted, you can see that in this clip, the hit of Tiger Drop itself ended, and Kiryu got hit and was interrupted, despite the animation not being over. So then we're back to pre-Yakuza 5, where you can take damage, but you don't even have super armor throughout the whole animation. So then I went and jumped into Kiwami 2, which much like how Yakuza 4 was a literal copy of Yakuza 3, Kiwami 2 was a copy of Yakuza 6, and seemingly Tiger Drop functions the exact same. You can see this from when I went into one of those Battle Royale things in the Colosseum, and after landing the hit of Tiger Drop, this ninja guy hit me with a flashbang and interrupted the attack. But you can also see from a later test that I did that the same flashbang went off right after the hit and it wasn't interrupted. Well, perhaps that's a weird little thing with those flashbangs, because I went and did some more tests and yeah, it worked the same as Yakuza 6 from what I could tell. So I went and jumped into Judgment, where Yagami also has Tiger Drop for some reason, although his has a slightly different animation where he hits with his palm rather than his fist, but whatever. Yakuza 5 brought back that fear and rage stuff, but it was removed again in Yakuza 6. Fortunately, Judgment brought it back, but unfortunately, Tashiro-kun, Cane Man, Ryan the Ninja, and Mr. Try and Hit Me are all a bunch of pricks that ruin every single recording I ever do because they just kill enemies I'm trying to keep alive, only for them to lock me in a cutscene after every fight. But again, fortunately, on my PC save, I hadn't done this sub-story here where you fight a shitload of enemies, so we were golden. In the first successful recording I had, you can see I did a Tiger Drop and just ignored the attack of the enemy I was countering, and you can see I also seemingly dodged the attack of the other boss enemy who was hitting me at the same time, because seemingly boss enemies can hit you at the same time regular ones can. At first, and it would not at all have surprised me if this was the case, because Yagami is an overpowered son of a bitch, I thought that maybe Tiger Drop made you invulnerable in Judgment, but after doing another test, you can see that just like 6 in Kiwami 2, Yagami got hit after the attack landed. But you can sort of see from this second recording that the attack hit Yagami quite late, which made me sort of think something. In the Dragon Engine games, does Tiger Drop make you invincible throughout the whole animation before the attack lands? And then afterwards, are you then invincible? Is that a word? I don't know. But I jumped into Lost Judgment after this and did some gauntlet challenges. Lost Judgment doesn't have Tiger Drop, but it does have basically the same thing with Dragon's Crushing Fist for the Tiger style and True Crane Beast Slayer for the Crane style. I was getting basically the same results as before, and I even countered Super Amon's Big Flame Explosion, which yes, you can do, and I took no damage despite being engulfed in flames. I still wasn't pleased with the results, and so I jumped into the battle against the 1000 Heartless or whatever it was, and suddenly I was pelted in the face by sheer magic. Blind. As in the status condition in Lost Judgment. It makes it so that you can't actually aim any of your attacks properly, making it so that Yagami will swing wildly in the air in the sort of general direction of an enemy. So basically being inflicted with blind turns the game into Yakuza 1. But after being hit with some pocket sand, I tried to counter this guy and his attack definitely should have connected, but I did not get hit. Then I quickly tried again, and this time after what would have been the impact of True Crane Beast Slayer, this guy's attack awkwardly hit me. And that's because 100%, without a doubt in my mind, counterattacks in Lost Judgment make it so that before the hit, you are definitely invulnerable, and then after the hit, you can take damage. And again, this is pretty safe to assume is still the case in all other Dragon Engine games. And just to be safe, I also wanted to test Dragon's Crushing Fist, but unfortunately during this gauntlet challenge it is specifically not unlocked for some reason, so I loaded up the fight in the actual game and after ages got hit with blind, went to counter this guy, Yakuza 1'd in the wrong direction, and his attack didn't hit me. Now this is similar to the Yakuza 0 situation where because the Tiger counter has a longer animation than the Crane one, you are invulnerable for a longer period of time. Again though, just to be 1,000,000% sure, I went deeper into the long battle and came up to these barrel guys who don't flinch at anything at all, and you can see that because of the Tiger counter's longer animation, I didn't get hit at all by their attacks. And then just to round off the analyses, I jumped into Gaiden, fought one of those Hell Team Rumbles solo, and Tiger dropped the giant dudes from Ishin Kiwami that they thought were a good idea, although they're not as bad as Ishin Kiwami, but anyway. You see his swords go right through me, and Kiryu takes no damage, but I do punch him right in the knee and he goes flying. So it's pretty conclusive then. Of the 11 games, or 12 if you want to count Ishin Kiwami as a separate game, that I tested the counterattacks in, 2 of them, Tiger Drop negated no damage but gave Kiryu super armor, 4/5 of them, it did negate all damage, and 5 of them, it negated damage for the first part of the animation, but did nothing for the rest of the animation. Now there were definitely more counters I could have tested, like Kaito having counterhook in Lost Judgment's The Kaito Files, but regardless of whether it worked like the original counterhook or just worked like Yagami's counters, it doesn't really matter because this video is about Tiger Drop. I'm sure someone's going to comment the exact properties that they've gathered from the game files, which yes, I could have gone through the effort of doing too, but I don't know how the hell to do that, and also that's not entertaining. Or fun. But to conclude this video, if Kratos were to fight Kiryu better hope he's somehow reverted to his Yakuza 5 self or something, because otherwise he's either going to take a shitload of damage and super armor through it, or Kratos is going to tank through one of his Tiger Drops and just obliterate him. Or maybe the attack will miss and nothing will happen. Or alternatively, Kiryu could ring up his detective friend Masaharu Kaito, and then ask Kaito to ring up his detective friend Takayuki Yagami so that he can take on Kratos. Because fun fact, Yagami would absolutely destroy Kiryu without even dropping a sweat, so maybe he's better to stand up against Kratos? How exactly would Yagami beat Kiryu, you might ask? Well, I'll explain that all next time on YouTube. On my YouTube channel. I don't know what I'm doing. I'll do it at some point, but yeah, expect that video in the future. Unless you are in the future, in which case, have they announced Judgment 3 yet? No? Not yet? Well. Fuck!